Very much. Senator Thune.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Secretary, thank you for being with us today. And I would echo what's been said by most of my colleagues with regard to the #1 priority of South Dakotans in the Farm Bill is a strong crop insurance program. By hands down, it's what people want to see maintained. It's the thing that they're most concerned with, and that is that we have a good risk management tool available to them. And that's not the only priority we have in the next Farm Bill, but that's certainly, I think, the most important one in terms of the people that I represent. Let me ask you, though, about the Energy and Rural Development title of the next Farm Bill, because that's critical in terms of the future of rural America as well. We've got forecasts of $4 gasoline now, perhaps by Memorial Day, and the full potential yet to be seen for rural America to contribute to our nation's energy independence is going to be really important in terms of drafting the next Farm Bill energy title. And we all know it creates jobs. It's been a tremendous economic boom for rural America. But it's really important that we get past corn-based ethanol and move on to next-generation biofuels and get to cellulosic ethanol. And I know that we've got a fiscal crisis here in Washington, D.C. that's going to impact the next Farm Bill. There's no spending baseline for rural energy programs in the next Farm Bill. We know we're going to have to do more with less. But I'm interested, I guess, in knowing, with regard to the energy title in the last Farm Bill, the Biomass Crop Assistance Program, which Senator Nelson and I included in that last Farm Bill, has two components for collection, harvest, storage, and transportation. And I'm interested in knowing kind of what your thoughts are with regard to that, whether that's an important part of the BCAP program. I met yesterday with the CEO of a major enzymes research and development company who told me that BCAP and that particular component of it, the collection, harvest, storage, and transportation component, is extremely important to the future of the biomass harvest and delivery to energy-producing facilities. So what are your thoughts on that? And do you believe that that particular component is important to furthering the development of cellulosic ethanol?
Senator, first of all, American consumers, because we have a robust biofuel industry, are probably paying, it's estimated, somewhere between 90 cents and $1.30 less for their gas than they would otherwise be paying, but for that industry. So we need to understand the importance that the industry does and provides in terms of consumer choice, and obviously the more that we do, the better those prices will be. As it relates to BCAP, as you well know, that program received a 96% reduction in funding last year. So we have $17 million to deal with a several $100 million need. Two aspects of BCAP, you've mentioned one, the collection, storage, transport, and harvesting, clearly important in order to be able to encourage producers to do what they have to do to accumulate the biomass necessary to fund these new ways of producing fuel. At the same time, we do have to diversify away from corn-based ethanol, so we've also focused on the second part of BCAP, which is the project area portion. With $17 million, there's not a whole lot you can do relative to the collection, storage, and harvesting. You really need more resource to be able to provide that assistance. Several $100 million has been used in the past for that part of the program. We'll continue to fund those contracts, but in terms of expansion of the number of contracts, it's going to be impossible at $17 million. So the question is, how do you use that limited resource for the biggest bang for the buck? And I think you'll probably see a majority of that being used in project areas. So I would encourage, if the Congress decides that BCAP is worth keeping, and I think you ought to very seriously think about this, that if you're going to have it, it needs to be adequately resourced. And we need to basically decide whether or not it's pilot project areas or whether it's collection, storage, and harvest. Playing two masters makes it difficult, especially if resources are tight.
Good. Let me go back to the issue that was raised by my colleague from Colorado, and that's the pine beetle issue. And I guess what I would say, I think we have a request probably into you right now to reprogram some funds to the Black Hills National Forest. We have an epidemic problem with the pine beetle in the Black Hills. And it's home to Mount Rushmore, with a huge economic impact on the state of South Dakota every year with visitors who come to visit. And, you know, it's tragic to see what has happened. We have 350,000 to 400,000 acres that are now impacted by the pine beetle, which, had we been better on the front end of this, would have been, I think we could have really done a much better job of preventing this from spreading. There's a certain amount of this that you're going to be dealing with all the time, but it's really gotten out of control. And so I would hope that to the degree that you can help with the Black Hills issue, that you will do that. I just wanted to reiterate that for the record here today. It is something that we have a written request in terms of reprogramming some 12 funds to the Black Hills. It's a very isolated area. It is one of our national treasures, and it's just been tremendously adversely impacted by the pine beetle. Let me ask just one other question, the time I have left. There's some, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on this and whether or not you've had any consultation with the Labor Secretary on this, but as you perhaps know, there are some new regulations that have been proposed by the Department of Labor that apply to young people working on farms and agricultural operations, which would be very restrictive in terms of what young people can do, limiting them to working at levels, anything over 6 feet would be prohibited, which would eliminate a lot of farm activity. Working with farm animals that are older than 6 months old, you know, working around grain elevators, stockyards, those sorts of things, certain types of equipment. And they have said that they're going to modify this. We don't think they've modified it enough. They're going to modify, evidently, the definition of farm. But there are still a lot of areas that would impact profoundly the way that farm operations function, particularly with regard to how young people contribute to the success of those operations. And I'm curious if you have conveyed concerns on the part of the agriculture community and department to the Department of Labor about these proposed regulations. It's insane to people in farm country.
Senator, I think one of the reasons why a portion is going to be reprogrammed and the rest of the rules being looked at is because we worked well with the Department of Labor. I actually personally talked to Secretary Solis about this issue. So rest assured that we've been engaged in it, we'll continue to be engaged in it. You know, I think all of us care about child safety, as we should, and all of us recognize that there are certain circumstances and situations in a sophisticated farming operation, and as sophisticated as agriculture is generally, that pose unusual risks. So we obviously want to deal with those. At the same time, what I explained to Secretary Solis and others in the Labor Department was that this is not just about safety, it's also about a value system. That in many farm families, the value of hard work, the importance of hard work, and the responsibility associated with pulling your weight and doing your share of the chores, that these lessons are taught in the very chores that they were discussing in this rule, and that they needed to be sensitive to the fact that this value system could be threatened by too restrictive a set of categories. And I think to their credit, they listened, and they now recognize that they've got a lot of work to do on this particular proposal, and we'll continue to work with them.
I hope you'll stay engaged with it. We really need a voice of reason on this, so thank you. Thank you, Madam